everybody, I hope you are having a fantastic day. If you are new here, my name is Melissa and I am a second grade teacher in Michigan. So today I thought I would tell you guys some things that I either learned my first year of teaching, wish I had known before starting my first year of teaching, or just advice that I have for first year teachers now that I'm going into my fourth year. I know that when I was graduating from college, there were so many things going on in my brain. Like, first of all, if I was going to find a job. Second of all, where that job was going to be, what grade it was going to be. Like, so many questions, but at the same time, my biggest fear was just whether or not I was ready to take on my own classroom. I learned so much from student teaching and had a great experience, but I feel like despite that, like there was still just this fear in me that I was gonna be the only adult in the room and there was gonna be no one else for me to turn to. And it was just gonna be up to me. And I just couldn't imagine the act of like actually teaching by myself, even though that was what I wanted more than anything. So I am here to just kind of reassure you that if you are in that boat, that it is okay, it is normal to feel that way, and that there are so many things that you are going to learn your first year. So hopefully by watching this, you can get a couple of tips before you start. So my first main tip for first year teachers is to ask questions. I am a huge believer in asking questions when you do not understand something or when you think that somebody can help you to do something better. So, for example, in the classroom, when our students do not understand, we really want them to ask. We tell them that it is okay to make mistakes, it's okay to not know what you're doing yet, and it's okay to have questions. So really, it shouldn't be any different for first year teachers because there are so many things you're just not going to know or you won't know the best way to do them. So it is so important to ask questions when you need help because I guarantee you will look so great if you ask a question about something you don't know and then you do it the right way versus just trying to do something and like scraping by the best you can and then ending up doing something incorrectly. And like if that happens too, like yes, that's gonna be fine, but sometimes it's just better to go out and ask questions beforehand so that way you can get answers. I feel like a lot of times people are afraid to ask for help because it makes them feel like they're not pulling their weight in a sense, but I just want to clarify there is a really big difference between asking someone to do something for you versus asking someone to help you with something. Another thing I find so important in your first year of teaching and really just every single year is to stay as organized as possible. Now for me, this is not something that comes naturally to me. I am a pile person. So in my classroom, you can walk in and you will see piles of papers and just things that kind of all have a place, but I don't always know where that place is right away. So I really stress to you to find some organization that works for you. Don't just tuck everything in random places because I did that my whole first year. I'm still guilty of that sometimes and it just ends up frustrating me. And it makes me waste so much time. So if you can, get as organized as possible as soon as possible and it'll make your whole year easier. A third thing I think that is really important for your first year is to make memories. You are never going to have another year that is going to be special in the same way that your first year is. Yes, every school year is special for something and in some way, but your first year is truly an experience that is unlike no other. Yes, sometimes it is in a bad way, but a lot of times it's in a really, really good way, and those good memories are going to be something that you're going to want to hold on to. So what I recommend is getting a folder or something to hold some student handouts in, some nice notes, so that way if you're having a bad day, you can open it up and look through it and just remember your why you're doing what you're doing, why it's worth the struggle. And also just take pictures if you are allowed. I'm not saying post them everywhere, but just so that you can reflect back on your memories with your students and you won't forget those kids, which, isn't gonna happen anyways, but it's so different to be able to look back on a memory that you can see in a picture or read a letter that a child wrote instead of just thinking about it. So I really encourage you to hold tight to those positive memories and find a way to be able to look back on those later on because I love doing that when I get the opportunity. Another thing I have to share with you is also not my biggest strength, and that is resisting the urge to pour everything into your classroom in terms of buying things. Yes, I love the Target dollar spot. Yes, I continue to buy from it every year. Yes, I have thousands of books in my library. But here's the thing. I really tried not to buy a ton of stuff until I had a classroom. It is so important for you to go into that space, think about how you can best organize it, find out the curriculum you're using and what materials are already being provided for you, and then make decisions. So a really good example of this for me is that my first year, I thought that I was going to need to buy an easel for the front of my classroom. When I got to my classroom, I found one that was in there already. So I was very glad that I did not spend the over $100 on an easel, and it was already there for me. And if I would have just bought that without really thinking about it or being patient, then I would have spent money that I hadn't needed to. So just be mindful of what you're buying. I'm not saying that you can't buy books. I'm not saying that you can't buy mini erasers. I'm not saying that you can't buy pencils, but just be mindful, especially of those big purchases, because some of that stuff might be there for you when you arrive. Along a similar line to that last one, know that your classroom is not going to be picture perfect from day one. My room has changed so much over the past 3 years. When I walked into my classroom my first year, it was 2 weeks before the school year started and only 1 week before open house. So I had a week to go through everything that was in that room, which granted was a lot because it hadn't been used as a classroom the year prior. So it was kind of a storage spot. So there were a ton of books, a ton of crates, a ton of curriculum, whether it was current or old, and there was a lot for me to go through. I didn't have time to do my bulletin boards. They were this lime green and a lavender color and a faded blue, and they had these borders that did not match at all. And that's just how it was for the first probably semester of my teaching. I think about halfway through my first year, when I was finally settled and felt confident in what I was teaching and my management style and all of that, I went out and bought new fabric for my bulletin boards. I started to switch around the borders, and that's just one thing that I changed. I've changed my library so many times. I went from desks to tables. I went from individual supplies to more community supplies, and there's just a lot of things that I have changed. And my classroom now is a space I'm really, really happy with, but it wasn't like that at first, and that's totally fine. You need to be focusing on what you are pouring into your students before you worry about the aesthetics and the look of your classroom. So just be patient. In time, that will all come. I'll try to put in some pictures here from my first year so you can kind of see, and then I'll put in some from my room today so you can kind of see what I walked into, what my room looked like originally, and then how it has changed. So just be patient and it will come together. I think this one is especially important for those of us who are on social media or on YouTube and just looking at other people's classrooms and other people's ideas, and that is to not compare yourself to others. It is so hard to sometimes look at what other people have and what other people are doing and to not feel frustrated with what you have and what you're doing. But you need to keep in mind, every school is different. Just like every child is different, your school population is going to be different. They're going to need different things. You are going to be given a different budget. You're going to have different amounts of support from parent organizations. There's so many factors that play into that. So just be mindful when you're looking at classrooms and at what people are doing and things they're implementing, that you might not be able to do those things because of one reason or another, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that you are lesser. That doesn't mean that you should feel bad. That just means that you are doing what is best for your kids with what you have, and that is what teaching is all about. It's not about doing the same thing as everybody else, because think about if you were a kid in school and all your teachers were the exact same, that wouldn't work. So just serve your children to the best of your ability, and that's what's important. I think another piece of advice I have is to draw on the knowledge of those around you. Talk to the veteran teachers in your building or even the newer teachers and just get inspiration. Talk about what's been working in your classroom, what you're struggling with, what's working in their classroom, or just check out people's rooms, with their permission of course, and see what they're doing. Like, get to know your coworkers and ask them, because they are like so wise, and a lot of times there are people in your building with a lot of experience, and you can learn so much if you just kind of take the time to step back and listen. That doesn't mean you have to do what they're doing if you don't feel comfortable with that or it doesn't feel like it's authentically you, but just to acknowledge that that's what works for them and get some ideas, and they can really help you along the way. Something else I think that is important every year of teaching, but especially the first year, is to get out into your school. Go to those after school events. Get to know the parents. Get to know the kids who aren't in your grade yet or have already been through that grade level, and just talk to some different kids in the hallway. It is so important to feel involved in your school community, and if you get to know your staff and your families and your students, you are going to feel so much more at home in your building. So make sure to take those risks, do those things like going to the carnival or volunteering at the talent show or sitting and eating lunch in the teacher's lounge. Just make yourself a part of your school community and get involved, because it will mean a lot to your students, it will mean a lot to the families, and you will just feel so much more at home, just a part of that community, which is so important. And then finally, I wanted to save the piece of advice that I think is the most important for the last piece, to just kind of leave you with that. And that is to remember that your whole identity is not being a teacher. I think it is so hard in your first year because you are so excited, you are so passionate, and you just want to pour everything into your classroom and your kids and your school, and that is fantastic, and that energy is amazing. But you need to remember that you are a person outside of being a teacher. You have needs, you have friends and family who love and care about you, and you need to make sure that you take care of yourself first, because you cannot teach effectively if you are running on no sleep, and if you are never taking time for yourself, if you're bringing work home every single night, every single weekend, if you're arriving to school like 3 hours early. Find what works for you, but know that it is okay to step away from work and school and just enjoy things that you previously enjoyed. I really struggled with this my first year, and I know that I am not alone in that. So just make sure that you keep your hobbies, keep your friends, keep your family close, and just enjoy life outside of teaching. So I feel like I was a little all over the place in this video because I really could just talk for a long time about this topic. If you are watching this and you are going to be a first year teacher or you are searching for a job, welcome to the profession. Congratulations. I am so excited for you, and I would love to hear about your journey. If you have any questions or anything for me, a great way to contact me is through my Instagram, which will be in the down bar. You can also find links such as my Amazon storefront, my Teachers Pay Teachers, and my classroom wish list. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon.